All right, I'm joined now by the Courier Mail's national political editor, Renee Valaris in Brisbane, and Herald Sun investigations editor, James Campbell. Well, James, you're a dad in Victoria. It's about as clear as mud there from Dan Teen, isn't it?
Well, to be fair to Dan, there's no point in sending your kids to school at the moment because they're not getting taught there. All that happens if you turn up is that your kids are getting the same distance education that they're getting at home. And they're not getting it from the teachers who normally teach them either. So, I mean, it's not as though it's a question of go to school and get a normal education or stay home and you know, have me trying to get you to write a story. There isn't a real school option that anyone can send their kid to anywhere. Yeah, I mean, at least we're slightly better than the ACT, where they've got hub schools, where even half of the schools aren't even open.
But this is where parents are pulling out their hair, Renee. You've got Queensland with no schools, Victoria with no schools, New South Wales has got schools open, but the Premier says don't send them there. And you've got the PM saying in a media release today, in a statement he did on camera, please send your kids to school, we need them in schools. And then you've got the Minister saying, well, I'm going to have a conversation with my children about whether they go to school. Now, sorry, I've never had a conversation with my parents about going to school. It's you're going to school, you're going to school, and that is it. Renee, help parents out here. What are the rules?
So they're different in different states. And I think I've had a lot of conversation with politicians about this. Many politicians have wives that either don't work or aren't working at the moment. And they don't want to be seen as being the politician that's just taking their kids to school when their wife isn't actually being considered an essential worker. So they're worried a bit of blowback, I think, when it comes to the optics of that. However, there needs to be one rule across the board, across the nation, and there can't be any definitions about having to register your kids like you have to in Victoria before you send them. There is no reason why teachers should not be at school. There is no reason why kids shouldn't be at school. I mean, when you think about it, Peter, when kids were at school, when at the height of this crisis, the rates of coronavirus were higher than they are now. Kids have been basically locked down for 2 weeks. They have been in social isolation. It makes no sense. It's time to go back to school.
Yeah, look, it's going to be a debate that continues, and I think this is where jurisdictionally the states are really starting to flex some muscle. James, I want to ask you about this app. You know, it wasn't so long, certainly in my recent political memory, that we had this whole debate about Australia cards and people not wanting numbers out there and, you know, their details tracked. But now they're being offered an app, and the app could get us all out of our homes sooner rather than later. That would track literally where we are every minute of the day. Not that our phones don't do that anyway, but you require a warrant to do it. Do you think it'll have much take-up? It'll be opt-in, the government says, but do you think people will vote with their feet?
Well, I can't honestly see the point why they're not making this compulsory. It's compulsory in South Korea. Restaurants are open there, bars are open. You can go to sporting events are happening. The idea that we weren't worrying about the civil liberties of this when we've got police going around to people's houses and busting them for having friends over, like the whole debate seems a bit 6 weeks ago to me. We've surrendered so many of our so-called civil liberties in the last month, that I mean, what's one more? I mean, if it enables us to move more quickly to unlock society and get people back circulating again, I can't see why on earth the government wouldn't mandate it. Particularly as if we get a flare-up of this, without it, it's going to be much harder for us to lock down places piecemeal without this. We really, really need this, and the government should just, I reckon, bite the bullet and tell people you're having it on your phone.
Well, it only works actually if enough of us have it. There's no point having it on my phone if I come into contact with someone who's got COVID-19 who themselves isn't tracked on the app, and I could get it from them, but I won't know and it won't work as designed to be. Renee, I mean, James makes a fair point. We've surrendered all of these liberties anyway. This could be the one surrendered liberty that actually gets a lot of the others back.
Yeah, but I just think Australians just don't like the idea of this type of stuff. You do need about 40% of people to turn onto this, to opt in. But if we have a look at the e-health record, I know that's slightly different, and comparing Australians to Asian countries, that seems to be a little bit more compliant. I just don't think Australians will cop it without being very assured about their civil liberties. I agree with you. I agree with James in a sense. You know, let's get out and about. The best way to do this is if we're protected by using this. But I just don't think all Australians will opt into this.
Can I just make a point though? Most people, very few people can be bothered setting their Google settings so that Google doesn't know where you are. Google and Apple know where we are all the time anyway.
I don't CCTV. Really,
yeah, I mean, the idea that we can move around the place anonymously in 2020 is just, it's just sort of, it's a dream that's for a time that's past.
Renee, I've got to ask you, GetUp, you and I have spoken about them a lot, particularly in last year's election campaign. They're out there at the moment asking for donations, basically almost trying to allude to a sense that they want to congratulate the government. They want to see what you think of the government's COVID-19 strategy and use it as a way to get out there. Well, it's not to congratulate Scott Morrison, we all know that, but you know, they are craven. They were out there around the issue of bushfires as well, trying to drum up money. How do you think it's going to be seen? Have people woken up out of last year's election about GetUp?
I think they just look so desperate, and it's almost ridiculous. It's bordering, it's laughable. I think, like I've said in the past, when GetUp first started, they looked like a cuddly community group, but we all know that they're a slick political outfit. And I think that they're probably going to be one of the victims of coronavirus because people just won't be donating to them. People had stopped donating to them anyway. And given the fact that Sally McManus has been probably, you know, she's almost become Labor's opposition leader, hasn't she? She's become more influential in a sense than Anthony Albanese. So I think that groups like GetUp have lost a lot of gloss. They don't have the reach as they used to, and they're probably going to die at some point.
James, I want to give you an opportunity,
a quick comment
about that. Well, I agree with that.
They're massively overrated.
Tell me about the High Court decision too. I just want to get a quick comment from you. The High Court decision in relation to Annika Smethurst and the quashing of that warrant. The AFP raided her home. All about newspaper sources, journalist sources. Tell us what you think.
Well, it's a bit of a glass half full, glass half empty decision. On the one hand, they found the warrants what was unlawful, but on the other hand, they haven't granted the relief that was being sought, which was that the evidence that was taken through the warrant can't be used. So it sort of leaves us a bit in limbo in that regard. It's good to know that there was the High Court, you know, thought that the police had gone a bit far, had gone too far in the way that they operated on the warrant. But it's in another sense, it's disappointing that they didn't say, well, you can't use the evidence.
All right, Renee Valaris, James Campbell, thanks very much for your time.